life has value because of its meaning to a soul. Pretty life currency is used to accrue meaning in life. Time. We are all afraid of losing time because we're afraid of running out before we can live our lives and find our purpose. Even some people who get old does not find their purpose in the end of the day, right? A lot of people die without finding out their purpose and fulfillment in life. And therefore we think that it is unjustified and not urgent enough for us to then sell this kind of time when it sometimes does not get the amount of benefit that it supposedly government supposedly portrays to panels. But first and foremost, clarifications under both rolled into one. Realize what the government then means by saying that there's supply and demand means markets, right? Markets in this context entails two things: A, commodification, and B, exploitations. A, commodification means in which previously hard to maintain or luxurious things become cheaper and cheaper. For example, foodstuffs like sushi or more expensive stuffs like that. In the years of 1800, for example, where trade is inaccessible between England and Japan, for example, it is very hard to attain such food, right? It becomes a luxurious and rare item, and therefore it becomes very, very expensive. But through globalization, it then becomes a commodification. And sushi is now sold everywhere around the world, right? Everyone is selling it, everyone is eating it. It's no longer a luxury thing because then it becomes commodified. And this is the exact thing that will happen with human lives, which can be attributed to either one, new production methods, or two, sheer inundation of supply. Which in the trade of human lives, there are a lot of human lives in this world right now, right? Especially when technology is accessible, and especially when we are dealing with poor people who have more suffering, or more poor people that have more motivation to then sell their lives to the market, right? Because especially when the popularity of such technology skyrockets, then a lot of people will be more attracted to it, and then lowers the price because of the supply. This means human life does not necessarily have high prices in the market, which is the core assumption of the government to then create all of these benefits that they claim to have, right? Which may not help the poor then to rise up from their conditions after all, as it will not create enough money for the long term, and is comparable to, for example, potting their own objects, or borrowing their own possessions for money, for quick money, for short money, right? It will not then create the kind of rising up from their own kind of situation. There's not significant enough, like the government tries to portray to you, that it is significant enough, right? Because it is their core assumption that human lives would always be high value in the market, right? But also, portrayed value of lives will then also decrease because it's a commodity now instead of a thing. Because you can buy, for example, 10 years of human life for just $100, for example, or these kinds of low prices, then the value of human life becomes very, very devalued, right? And then moral constructs like religion and societal values cannot then keep up with this earth shattering technology that can easily take away and give lives to another person, because then they cannot adapt, because these kinds of constructs and values need to adapt. And so the government cannot then claim that these values will then put the value of human life into a much higher pedestal than it is right now, right? Because even right now, with the existence of such things, human life is not valued by all people the same, and things like that, right? But also be exploitations. Today's capitalistic markets are inherently exploitative to get the most profit. It is not based on resource distributing, it is based on profit, right? It is not inherently evil. What I mean is that to profit, one must pounce on any kind of opportunity, market dips, trends, and all these kinds of things, but also more sinister things, like exploiting low labor costs, exploiting lax regulations in developing countries to then get more labor, right? For example, see the harvesting of silica in Africa for cosmetics. How many poor people die and suffer there for the market? Is it not essentially the same as selling their own lives to the market to then get just enough scraps of money, just barely enough to keep them living, and then keep working on those poor conditions where they can easily die at any time, right? This shows that the market doesn't care about the human cost to get their commodity, to get their products, right? But also this means that schemes arise up from actors that exploit vulnerable actors, like human farms of terminally sick people, where these actors will then compile a lot of terminally sick people and then ask them to sell their lives to end their lives because they are suffering, right? But also illegal harvesting of lifespans, which can already happen because most of transplant organs are now in the industry are stolen, right? Because this means that a lot of people are then going to illegally kidnap a poor person from the street, or a homeless person in the street that do not have any kind of security, and then take their lives forcefully, right? Which can also but also fraud and investment fraud and things like that, right? But also in markets, the rich dominate, right? They get to live essentially in this system effectively forever by exploiting the suffering of the poor that is already suffering with their terminal illnesses and economic condition. Like this exploitations of the impoverished is already happening anyway, and this exacerbates that. This means more suffering for the people, more suffering to the people under the rich, in the rich class, right? But even if there is still underground markets, with the restriction is not useless at all. As such, technology must be complicated and hard to access, because how do you extract lifespan out of people? It must be a very involved process. And so we think their portrayal of things becoming like marijuana, where there is still an underground market, is completely invalid, because it's not comparable, right? Marijuana is more portable, it's smaller, it's not as complicated. Extracting literal human life from a person. But the point of framing panels, in this debate, I have to prove to you why this is dangerous, but why it is also unjustified, right? But also a point of trade-off panels. They might say that we are stripping away the people's then autonomy of the body and their decision to live life as they want, right? But realize what the trade-off of that is that things that make already suffering people suffer more are not existent on our side, right? These schemes that exploit terminally ill people or suffering people will not then increase in number and intensity because human lives will always be a commodity, right? Human lives will be trivialized because of its status as a commodity. But my point of arguments, I have 2 points of arguments: A, avoiding the flippant valuings of life; B, exterminating all chances for even more exploitation. I will start with A, avoiding the flippant valuings of life. Discourse panels will not solve flippant valuings of life, right? Values change for the worst. Values will change, as they say, but values will change for the worst because then the people will then trivialize the value of human life. Tying human life to the market means tying its value to the whims of the market, the hand of the market. The market is unstable, right? It has bubbles and crashes throughout history. For example, the dot-com bubble or the Great Depression. This leads to an unstable valuing of human life, especially with the incentive of making profit. Prices fluctuates a lot, right? A lot of different individuals selling their own life may price their lives even differently. And to get even a modicum of money, then you have to sell your lives for a very small amount because there's a lot of people that want to sell their lives in the world right now, right? And this is very, as they say, incredibly accessible, right? This is problematic at 2 layers. One, the seller then does not value their own life by just selling away a portion of their life to get a measly amount of money that may not last them, for example, 5 years or even 10 years, right? The seller will then less value their lives and sell more and more of their lives, while while they can actually use their lives to get to a higher place in society or the economic ladder, right? But also the buyer then, especially the rich people, will not then be in touch with humanity. Why? Because then they will see lives as something that can be bought. So you see their lifespans as something that is not even worth to think about, right? Because it is so cheap then in the end that these buyers would then buy such things without much thinking of the people who sells their own lives, who are forced to sell their own lives. They don't see the horror of it. They don't see the like complete point of it, right? They don't see the struggles that the people who sell their lives must go through to then resort to such measures, right? Because it is a desperate measure. How many people want to actively decrease their lifespan in this world, right? We are afraid of dying. All people are afraid of dying, and these buyers will not then be in touch with humanity and will not be moralistic to the people because then they will see people as commodity, as human lives as commodity, right? But a point of person panels on their side, they're lesser value tied to the cold forces of the market, right? Because it's possible because market changes all the time and the values change over all the time. But even if not, there is flippant valuing of human life. But in our case, because there's a value of life because of existing discourse and of people like now even people are talking about the value of human lives in the world, in the internet, and literature, for example. But even if not, there is at least there's no lessening of human life in the society right now. Right, but no matter the argument, exterminating all stands for moral exploitation. Even without directly dealing with human life, the people at the top of the economic ladder has no regard for human costs. Exploitations of workers, consumers, the common people is rampant. Exploitations of their power, of their capability, of keeping them poor to then keep the costs of operating a business low and things like that, right? Or exploiting workers that they're half dead because they're working so hard. The price is even higher then when we are directly dealing with the life of another. The risk and the damage will be higher. It is not inherently or indirectly affecting another person's lives. It is directly then selling and buying their lives, right? Therefore, we must stop such a thing before it further exploits the suffering people. But the point of present past. On their side, there's more exploitation. But even if not, it is more harmful when compared to usual exploitation in our world right now, right? But in our case, there is no exploitation of human lives directly. But even if there is, it is less harmful than if you were to democratize and just let the people do whatever they want with their lives, right? But also, therefore, I rest my case.